This week I'm going to be making a personalised oak coaster. The wood I'll be using is already set up on the CNC machine bed, so as you may have already guessed, this isn't one I've been making by hand, but instead I'll be designing it using the Vectric Cnc software and machining it on the CNC itself. But this is certainly a project that could easily be done with a portable router and a steady hand. I'm going to be personalising the coaster with my son's signature, and this will be his present to his grandparents for Christmas. I've rough drawn out the size of the coaster on sheets of paper for him to write on, and it will be an experiment to see what works best for the project. To see which transfers best to the software, we'll be trying various pens and pencils and felt tips. To transfer the images to the computer, I've tried several ways to see what works best. I've taken photos of the signature, I've scanned the images using a printer, and even drawn direct to an iPad. In the end, I found using a thick marker worked best because I'm going to be using the pocket hole tool to remove material for the lettering. Because the smallest cutter I have is 1/8 of an inch diameter, I needed the lettering to be quite thick for the cutter to fit within the vectors that I was going to be creating. The problem was I only had one suitable thick marker and this had very little life left in it. I knew this could cause me problems when using the software to create vectors from an image. So to help the software, I used a free drawing program on the PC and simply traced over the image with a solid colour. Being new to the Vectric software, I'm not intending this to be an instructional video, but more of a video to show how I designed and made the coaster. If you can see ways to improve the processes, then by all means let me know. It was also the first time using a screen record software, so it's not the most professional talk through, but hopefully as time goes by the videos will improve. So on creating a new file, I already knew what my job size was as it was already set up on the CNC machine. So it's simply a case of transferring all the measurements to Vectric. I always design a machine from a centralised datum position, so for me this never changes, and Z0 is usually for me the top of the workpiece of the coaster. For some reason the computer was really lagging, and options I was selecting didn't always show up in the recorded screen video. But the first thing I did was to import my image ready to convert into a vector by going to File and importing the bitmap of Zach's signature. The first vector preview I got without altering any settings was fairly close. Zoomed in it looked terrible, but from experience I know on something like this coaster these minute imperfections will be difficult to see. Nevertheless, I played around with the settings until I felt I got the best looking vectors without noticeably altering the overall signature, and then I pressed apply. One thing that I wasn't happy with was the trace had picked up a bit of ink bleed on the letter A, so I removed this by going into node editing, removing the portion that I didn't want and closing the vectors with a curve. It really does look a mess all zoomed in, but I wasn't too concerned as I knew this wouldn't really be noticeable once machined. Before grouping all the three letters, I lined them up a little bit better to make sure they'd fit into the coaster. I didn't want to alter this too much as it has to resemble the original signature, and with all the tweaks being minimal it looked fine. The next thing to do was create the coaster shape. I made it 110mm square with 8mm rounded corners, and the wood was 16mm thick. Then all that was left to do was resize the lettering to fit into the coaster and centralise the letters to the shape of the coaster itself. And that's all there was to it. I checked material setup and made two G-code files. The first one was the pocket toolpath for cutting the lettering at a depth of 2mm, and the second toolpath was an outside profile cut with two tabs holding the coaster in place. I ran the simulation which looked fine, so it was time to machine the coaster.